Woo! I always love dancing in on the Friday. Happy Friday, everyone. It's so glad to be back in the room where it happens. It's going to be a bright and empowering show. I can promise you that. When you leave here, your eyes are going to be wide open because as activists, leaders, and as just good human beings, it's critical. It's good practice, actually. And it's somebody's being noisy, polite and smart and strategic to see things clearly. So understanding the obstacles in your way and learning to cut through the noise and paying attention even to your own biases and all this makes us strong and powerful when we're doing our work. And that means thinking out of the box. So we're going to think outside the box today. We're going to go do something a little different before we introduce all our guests. We're going to do an ode to speaking up and reading the room and setting the narrative with our badass friend. Juli Briskman is here with us. And she, of course, you know her as the Algonkin District Supervisor, but we know her as the woman who flipped off the Donald Trump caravan. Hello, Juli.
Hello, so good to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
It's always fun because you do speak up and you do know how, definitely know how to read the situation. Donald Trump was a danger. You're riding your bike and you just spoke up.
I did. When I had my encounter with the former guy, we had already had a year of his shenanigans and
having it.
Sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. No,
okay.
I'll tell you what we'll do. We know about the shenanigans. Let's go right to read the room, buddy. I think if people are paying attention to what happened recently, Robin, cue it up for us, and then Julie and I will dissect it. And if you're out there listening, it's February 4th, 2022. Governor Youngkin visited the Safeway in Alexandria with a brief encounter with somebody in the store. And let's listen to what happened.
Governor, where's your mask?
Well, we're all making choices.
Yeah, look around you, Governor. You're in Alexandria. Read the room, buddy.
And then as you see there is the Washington Post article, an ode to women who say what they're thinking. So yeah, let us know what you're thinking. I mean, so much is going on right now out in Loudoun, school board levels. And just, I think now we're seeing people kind of getting finally vocal and pushing back. So tell us what your take on why it's important to speak up and reading the room. And what are you going to tell us today, Julie?
I think that obviously speaking up is always important. And I think that when I spoke up against Trump, it sort of was a year into it and we had all hoped that he would pivot and he hadn't pivoted after a year. And people were ready to say out loud what I said on my bike. And so it kind of opened the floodgates to criticizing our president loudly, which as Americans, we don't want to do that. Like a democracy is built on the fact that you have peaceful transition of power and then everyone tries to respect that highest office. So I think it was uncomfortable for us for that first year. Now, Governor Youngkin has this opportunity still, I believe. He has an opportunity now, and we're all watching so closely and hoping, will he pivot? Will it be false what Terry McAuliffe was saying on the campaign trail? Is he a Trump mini-me or not? The message didn't win the election, but we all fear that the message is true. And this incident in the grocery store told him what a lot of people are thinking and gives him that opportunity to pivot. And we all hope he does.
Right.
Luckily, if he doesn't, we still have the Virginia Senate to hold him accountable.
Well, that's true. And it is kind of holding people's behavior accountable. If anybody in the room who read the article, put your hand up. Did you read it? Put the link in there. Great. It's sort of like you've all been on that train with that person, with that guy. Oh, of course, she put her hand up there. Yes. Thank you, Miriam. That is talking so loudly, everybody can hear the conversation, right? And then I loved it because she dialed his phone number because he was even giving out his cell phone and then talked him on the phone and gave him ideas about his job.
And she called herself Black Jesus, which I find phenomenal. But the thing that Petula Dvorak pointed out in the article, which I think is so critical for all politicians out there, is the people that are speaking up who might be loud from time to time. First of all, as women, sometimes we feel the need to be louder. I work with some folks like the guy on the train, I'm not going to lie. But the thing that she pointed out in that article is we are of substance. We are women of substance. And every once in a while, if we're outside the boundaries of how folks think that we should be communicating with someone in higher office, well, guess what? We are women of substance, and our message is true and should not be diminished just because it came in an unconventional way. Like, read the room, buddy.
Yeah. It's like having that right to speak, and and to be heard and seen. But yet it's sort of like, I don't want to pick on guys, we love men, that it's sort of, they don't read the room a lot. They interrupt us, or they just talk over us, or they take, our ideas or whatever. So it's critical, I think, even in, like you said, getting along and just sort of making sure that we are actually tackling the issues that are important, So no, that was very exciting to see you in that. And so what is ahead for you now in the sense of what you are speaking up about? What's on your mind next? And then we're going to introduce all the guests.
Absolutely. I mean, the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors, as you all know, we took the Democratic majority in 2019. There are certain factions in the state who are very, very upset that the Purple County is now blue. And they are continuing to fight against us with lots of money from dark, interest groups, dark money from interest groups, and those sorts of things. I'm focusing on a lot of initiatives that are helping with multimodal forms of transportation in the county.
That's a big word.
I started an initiative to study the impacts of segregation and massive resistance in public schools, and we're looking toward reconciliation. We have continued our COVID response. And by the way, a governor representative spoke at a Virginia Association of Counties conference a week or two ago. And usually when they come to speak, they're thanking locally elected officials for helping with things like COVID response, distributing ARPA funds, distributing CARES Act funds, making sure people get vaccinated. Youngkin's representatives did not do that. They continued the divisiveness. And many of us from Northern Virginia actually walked out of the room. So read the room, buddy.
Read the room, buddy.
It's time to pivot. It's time to pivot to governing for all people.
Yes.
And not just slamming the folks that you think are from the other side of the aisle.
Yeah. I think that the reading the room is so good for Virginia, because I think he is really has misread the situation, has overstepped. And I think that, in our opportunities coming up in this election, it'll be really important to understand, to keep saying the good things that we are trying to do for the people. And also, come on, these bills about shutting down history. We have Cosm here to talk about that history, and we're in Black History Month. And it's like, are you serious? But maybe white supremacists don't know how to read the room. Could be. They think it's all about them.
Could be. When you're used to being the privileged class and the dominant race,
right.
Sometimes it's very difficult for you to read the room and realize that other voices belong, other voices need to be heard, and the stories of other voices are important and valid and should help you set policy.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to wrap up this section. Hope you can stay with us.
I'll stay around for a while. Thank you so much.
Yeah, because we have the after chat and all that good stuff, but we really wanted to come out and think outside the box ourselves today. And I'm looking at the room, I see everybody, and I'm reading the room. How's everybody feeling? Friday, it's sunny outside. It's not raining where I'm at. So finally, it's maybe not going to be 20 degrees. So let's get started. It is February 11th, 2022, and welcome to the Friday Power Lunch. And let's meet our guests. We already met Juli Briskman, but let's meet the guests for today. All right. I would love to introduce you. It's my pleasure to introduce President of Pherson Associates, Randy Pherson, a critical thinking expert. How are you, Randy? Uh-oh. You got to unmute. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Hey, Randy.
I'm doing very well. I'm enjoying the introduction.
Yes, I'm saying that I want to let everybody know that you are a hometown Springfield guy, born and raised over here in Springfield, Virginia.
Correct.
Correct.
My father was born and raised in Fairfax, Virginia.
Yes, so that is very cool. And you went to now it's John Lewis, but you did go to Robert E. Lee. So so glad to have you.
It was just a couple of years ago.
Oh, just a couple. Okay,
Right.
good. Yes, just graduated, got your cap on. Well, thank you for being here because it's going to be so interesting to talk about how to think, how to really look at data, look at information, to really know how to be a critical thinker. And especially for us that are leaders, this is really important to understand how to read the room so we can set the right narrative. So thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
All righty. Okay. Next up, and I don't think he's here yet, is Kazim Rashid in the room yet?
No, he's not.
Team?
No,
All right.
he's not.
Okay. He'll be coming. Kazim, I think, is in court doing his thing, so he should be with us later. All righty. And then I am so excited. Deborah Woolen is here, founder, editor-in-chief of What She Said magazine. How are you, Deborah?
I'm well. Thank you so much. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, the room's loving you. And you also had some good interview yesterday with Juli Ward.
I did.
Yeah, so you did a really in-depth on Inside Scoop. So we're excited to learn about your magazine and also Black women in politics is such an important subject for Black History Month and year round for sure. So thank you, Deborah. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, hello to the crew. The crew that in this room that gets things done. Stair Calhoun, Robin Warner, Heidi Dragniff, Rosemarie Shortstop. I think she made it in the room. And then Jaleesa Ward. Hello, my friend. How did Inside Scoop go yesterday? And you did an interview with this wonderful editor-in-chief, Deborah Woolen. Did you enjoy it?
Oh, I enjoyed it so much. Me and Deborah, we got straight to business, and we had a really good time at Inside Scoop. We had plenty of time to really go into detail about the power of Black women in our democracy. So I'm hoping that everyone follows up with that after our segment today, this Monday coming up at 8:00.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. I think that's really great so that's going to be a new opportunity for us on the Power Lunch to do some segments on Inside Scoop, which is a Fairfax public access channel, to kind of do some cross-pollinating. We're really excited about that. So we're really excited about that interview, Jaleesa. So thank you. Now we're also going to, sorry, I stepped right on that. Okay, you're looking good too, by the way, as usual.
Thanks. You're getting ready for Valentine's Day.
Woo, you're getting ready for Valentine's Day. All right, yeah. Show the love.
Spread love over here.
All right.
All right, girl.
Yeah, I see some hearts going up. So thinking outside the box, that's what we're really kind of trying to do today. So we brought in somebody new for our news segment. I'm so excited to introduce Alice Sheff. And she is the National Women's Political Caucus in Virginia. She is the grassroots, she's going to be doing our grassroots, it's a mouthful, grassroots legislative update. Welcome, Kelly. Let's hit it with some new views of legislation.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm part of the NWPCVA. I'm part of the social media team. So we are looking at several bills in the General Assembly right now. HB 291, otherwise known as SB 266, which is the caregiver tax credit. So in SB 266 in the Senate was discussed Wednesday morning in the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee. And then HB 291, the caregivers tax credit bill in the House, is supposed to be heard in the House Appropriations this afternoon. So the delegates that are on the committee are going to be in the chat. So if you would reach out to them that you support this important bill. Again, it is HB 291 that's seen in the House this afternoon. HB 1105, otherwise known as SB 456, which is the implicit bias training bill. It got killed in the Senate, but in the House, the Health and Welfare and Institutions Committee also recommended to pass the bill by indefinitely for it to be studied in a working group. So we are in contact with the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy, and we will follow their lead on advocacy over the next year. But then SB 493, it's a mouthful, right? Reported out of the Senate Judiciary Committee. First reading of the bill was yesterday. The second reading of the bill is right now today. The final reading of the vote is on Monday. The final reading and the vote is on Monday, pardon me. And if it passes, it will cross over to the House where it will have a new, beautiful life, right? And our VP of Comms, Jennifer Gaylor, and her daughters are in session right now watching the vote, and they will update the NWPCVA social outlets with an update later this afternoon. So you can stay tuned, check out our social media sites. And if you want to see how we support advocating these bills, you can check out our toolkit page. And that is also going to be listed in the chat Don't know where the chat is, but if you find it, that's where it's going to be. Oh,
Okay.
and also, real quick, if you are interested in our organization, we are offering $22 off, and it's only $77 for memberships. If you're interested in our organization, just to throw that out there, it's a New Year's present.
That's a New Year's present. Wow, that was like the fastest report ever. I loved it. And now I'm trying to remember what the bills were. It's the lewd bill, I call it, or we were calling it the you know what pick. That one is, did you mention that one?
Yeah, so sorry, that's the one that goes is currently, the lewd bill is oh my gosh, the lewd bill is
We don't need the number. People won't remember. We're going to call it the lewd bill.
The lewd bill, yes.
You need us to show up for that because we don't want, that's a real problem, so that's great to bring up. And there's a couple other, what was the other one? Give me the other focus bill that you
So the implicit bias bill got passed both in the House and the Senate. So we are just waiting, and we will update as we learn further, but both the House and Senate put it for next year. The caregivers tax credit, so that is being looked at this afternoon, as well as the lewds bill is currently getting discussed right now. So those are for
that bill. It just drives me nuts because I feel like it's Lewds, Maryland. It's a place we live. It's
yeah.
But anyways, I appreciate you coming, and also the plug for the National Women's Political Caucus. I'm a member. Almost everybody, probably there's a lot of women in this room. Please join us. What we do is we support women running for office. We endorse them, help with training. There's all kind of stuff. We're gearing up. We've only been around a couple of years, but we really focus, as you see, Allie is here, on policy that affects, women and men and families. But we really are specific about reproductive rights and equality, and really fighting for what's really going to make, progress around women's issues. So thank you, Allie. I really appreciate it. Good to see you. Now I'm super excited for this next segment because I tell you what, as Democrats or as activist leaders, hey, Randy, you've been in this business, Randy Pherson, you've been in this business for 28 years, at least in the intelligence business. And you know how critical it is to understand intelligence on the ground globally when governments are looking at what's really happening in a country, or even now, like what's happening, to basically read the room to make sure you can get in front of chaos, right? But what made us interested, we saw your blog, and you really had something that woke our eyes up, because a lot of us have been complaining about this narrative that's been set that Democrats are going to lose, because that's the narrative. And you actually posit a different way to look at it, that maybe if we're looking at the right way, that actually we may be missing something, we could actually win big. That's what we'd like to get into. But before we do that, I'd like to really get into what you do so the room understands what you do, what that means to be a critical thinker, what kind of analysis and data and all that stuff. Give us your background. You're better at giving you such a great bio, but tell us what you do, some of that background, and then also, then we'll get into what that means for our work. Oh, you have to unmute, Randy. Sorry.
Yeah, briefly, I was a senior analyst and a manager at Central Intelligence Agency. I retired as a national intelligence officer, and basically then started to take what I've learned and try to apply it to help other people become better analysts. So over the last 2 decades, I've been writing books on analytical techniques and critical thinking skills, and teaching here and doing a lot of teaching overseas with other people that want to learn how to be good analysts. I just finished teaching a course yesterday to 24 cyber analysts in Norway, which meant that I had to get up at 5 in the morning because we had to teach it on their calendar, not mine. But right. My approach is to help people think and to basically show them some methodologies and mechanisms that allows them to process the information objectively and then see how things are going. And one of the things when I did this blog, I took one of the techniques that's in my book. It's called it's a structured analytical techniques for intelligence analysis. And it says, if you want to challenge your assumptions, you can take a critical assumption and flip it and say, every time I turn on the radio, someone's saying it's obvious that the Democrats will lose the House. So well, let's just flip it and then say, what would have to happen if that were true. So we call that a what if analysis. And it requires you to come up with a couple of scenarios that say, this is how it changed, and then this is how we got from here to there for it to occur. And there were papers like this that I used to write when I was at CIA, although we called them scenarios of dramatic political change. And the idea was to avoid having our policymakers surprised by some development, that we've anticipated it, we thought about it, and we realized how it could have come about. So I took what I've been learning and doing overseas, looking at foreign targets, and then decided I should start applying that here in the US. And just one little footnote, one of the things, if you go back to my blog, I'll post it later, is I did a study of work that we had done on insurrection in the world and what causes insurgencies to pop up and insurrectionists to become powerful. And I took the indicators and I applied them in the blog to the United States. And like, so on a scale of 1 to 10, generally the US came out around 5. And that really got my attention because we weren't thinking about that 5 years ago, that there could be insurrection in the US. And now you've got empirical data and you have good methodology that says we have a serious problem.
Yeah, we do have a serious, it's like, hello, right? And it's interesting. I'm sure you're paying attention to the border in Canada and, and predicting. And it's so funny when you talk about like reading the room and setting the narrative. And I hear now it's just this really big push that could happen in LA and, and I think that's why it's really important for us when we are looking, about what around our work and what's important, what is really happening. And so we don't get stuck. And when you talk about innate biases, can you kind of get into that a little bit more? I mean, what we see in this idea that the Republicans will win, it's because there's also the history there that says, based on these indicators, most likely this will happen. But when we're doing our work, and when you talk about innate bias, can you give us an idea of why that is so important for people to understand when they are making decisions, or maybe they're making a wrong decision based on wrong analysis?
Well, we put a lot of emphasis on the need to be sensitive to and aware of we have 3 things: cognitive biases like confirmation bias. Then we say they're misapplied heuristics like premature closure, where you come to a decision quickly. You could be right and really smart, you could be wrong and really in trouble. And then we've developed another group of intuitive traps, which is in our own methodologies, things that you assume that the future will be like the past, or you rely on your past experiences to determine what's going to happen. That's the example here, is that people say, look at past experiences. The party in power will lose seats in the House always, so this has to happen again. Well, it's a very complex world today. And the question is, does that necessarily have to be right? And could it be wrong? So what you want to do is to flip it, find out, challenge your assumptions. And if you say, is it possible that's wrong, then it's not a good assumption. So you try to do that kind of analysis. And generally we add to that, as you're trying to overcome or deal with your biases, you generally need some indicators. You need some things to keep you honest. So come up with an objective yardstick of what you think is going to happen, and then see if it comes out or doesn't come out. If it's not happening, you better start rethinking your process. So at the end of the blog that I did, we had a bunch of indicators that said, should this highly surprising or unanticipated scenario come true, you're going to start seeing the following 8 things. And just start tracking it between now and November. And if none of those 8 things happen, then it was not going to happen. But if things are starting to flip, then you can see it coming. And generally with the indicators, you can give yourself advanced warning or advanced hope, that something's going to change and it could be a tipping point.
Yeah. So in your blog, when you're talking about that, you did, we're grassroots people here. So this is very interesting. I know I've sold this as to get people to come to say, hey, you know what? We could really blow this out of the water. It's just, are we seeing it the right way? Are we watching the room? And then are we talking about it the right way? I really want to challenge people in the room, because I think it's a lot of also, we fall into these traps, and I saw it with the election in Virginia, for instance, where it was like, oh, this always happens because that's the way it's happened in history. But we've also seen that things haven't been actually going like they normally did. We saw that in some of the election wins or losses. So it's good to challenge that. And I think that we saw indicators actually that Virginia would be able to win. It's this that we don't have to get into, but there was reasons why that just didn't happen. So right now, you listed out some of those indicators and drivers. Talk about those a little more so people understand when you talk about indicators, what does that mean for people in the room to understand that, and then the drivers, and then how that works. Could you get into a little bit of that?
Well, let me start with drivers. The question is, if you're going to flip the assumption that the Democrats will lose control of the House. So let's go forward to February or January 2023, and you're listening to commentators on the TV. What are they saying happened? So it's kind of the what if approach. And in my view, there may be two drivers, two themes that would have explained why everyone was greatly surprised by what happened. One would be that commentators would say, Black women made the difference. Look at what they're doing. Look at what they're doing politically. Look at what the Black female prosecutors are doing vis-a-vis Trump. Look at what's going on at the Supreme Court and Roe v. Wade issues. Basically, they were an engine of change, and they brought it home again. So that's one theme. The other theme is it turned out to be a battle of existentialist threat, that you had basically the Republicans and the white majority trying to hold on to power, and then you had the counter existential threat. And there it gets interesting, because if you're going to be positive and constructive, then how are you going to, what threats are you going to focus on? In my view is the destructionists know how to really scare people. What you need is a constructionist threat that it mobilizes people. So one obvious example would be, how do you mobilize the youth around a theme such as environmental climate change? Right. They have a lot invested. So they would actually maybe get out to the vote just to be able to have a nice life in 20, 30, or 40 years from now. The other two that I was thinking about is critical is voting rights. And it really affects persons of color as much as others. And you don't want to have that right diminished. I just saw there was a CNN poll yesterday that came out that scared me. It said 56% of the people polled think that future elections will be overturned. I mean, that's startling. No one would have thought of that 2 years ago.
No.
So that would mobilize people, and it's the sort of thing where people feel that there is an existential threat to them. And maybe the third one I was coming up with, I call it income disparities, but it's money. And they're really being hit hard by inflation and these other issues now, gasoline prices. What can you do as a Democratic, what could the Democrats have done that would have turned that narrative around? So suddenly you're talking about how the Democrats are helping them get over and overcome these problems, as opposed to they're causing it. So then you get into some of the Build Back Better programs that could maybe be focused on the ones that would have the most power. I'm thinking there, you could look at something like child care tax credit. It's just obvious that if you're losing money because inflation is going up, if you can get that sort of a monthly stipend, it makes a huge difference. The other one was education. If you're looking at junior college or pre-K education, that helps. Child care issues helps. And lastly, health, like the prescription drugs that Biden and Spanberger were talking a lot about yesterday. Those are things that have direct impact, and people would feel them. So you have two battles of people feeling existential threats. You're mobilizing the population, and the question is who's going to mobilize better. So I'm not predicting this is what should be done, but I'm thinking if I had to explain what happened and why there was a Democratic victory and they gained seats instead of lost them, I'm pretty sure it would have to go back to these fundamentals to try to flip it. There are a lot of other things you can debate, but those are not as existential or critical in terms of bringing out the base.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, when you a couple of things you said are really interesting also, that about you just the voting and the issue on voting rights. We saw it yesterday discussed as well on the floor. I mean, really closing down polling places in Wisconsin, that even the judge went along with taking out ballot boxes. Now, my hope is like you, is like, framing this up that the Republican is their existential threat to our democracy. And even after they censured Liz Cheney and they called the insurrection, what did they call it? The word, I'm just now blanking, but they had a word for it, like appropriate behavior.
Social discourse.
Social discourse. I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. They are really setting up us in a dangerous position. So you're thinking that this is really something that will energize people, because they can also see really now all areas shutting down, right? And then when for, so I think that is good. And also I know they're going to push on inflation, but even today there was an economist talking about that inflation's actually going down if you take it the way you analyze it, but that number will not show and shift. It will be sitting on that number that's not showing that it is going incrementally down a bit. It will just be how we talk about it, how really people feel. And that's important in your work to really make sure that you're looking at all those social indicators.
Well, the critical issue of inflation is that you feel it every day when you go to the grocery store, et cetera.
Right.
At the same time, the wage enhancements are going up. And generally, if you look at the big picture from an annual basis, wage adjustments are pretty much keeping pace with inflation. So it should kind of come out as a neutral factor, but that's not how you experience it as a person. So, and gasoline prices is the other example. There's very little you can do, but if you're looking at it over time, the gasoline prices are almost lower than they used to be if you adjust for inflation 10 years ago. So
right,
you need to, but it's hard, but you're not going to win the battle with those kinds of arguments because people are saying, yeah, I'm not seeing that every day.
Exactly.
And I won't realize it until I do my taxes next April.
Right. And because there's no action on the other side to really govern or to really make any kind of responsible decisions around this. So they seem to want to kind of brew in the chaos at the expense of our democracy. And then before we wrap up here, if you just have any parting words, but I know that you talk about some of the drivers, we talk about indicators. So when you look at drivers, is that looking about how people are mobilizing, or do you look for how people are sort of talking about things? How do you look at the drivers?
It's less what they're talking about, because often they're not talking about the drivers. The drivers are just motivating them. So what you're trying to do, what we do is we do workshops, foresight workshops, and we get people to look at the whole range of environmental factors that impact on how you think, whether social, political, environmental, legal, and you look at all of those issues and try to decide what are the fundamental dynamics that are underscoring things. If you look at the Trump election in 2016, nobody really saw that coming, or a lot of people were surprised by that. And then we've had a lot of time to try to figure out what the fundamental driver was. A couple studies just came out now saying it was not people who were losing jobs and are economically disadvantaged or whatever. It was much more a feeling that people were losing their place in communities and that they're no longer in the majority status. So that's a huge shift from how it was analyzed. So you're getting now towards what the key drivers are to explain the Trump phenomenon. You have to understand that. What you want to do is do the same thing to come up. If you can find the key drivers that would explain the constructivist phenomenon, if it becomes more powerful in the future, then that's where you hitch your wagon. And you say, this is where you're going to have impact.
I like everybody in the room to get that, the constructionists and the deconstructionists. And I think that's a great takeaway, that is what, really when we spoke, that really made me feel like, yeah, you're right. People that are deconstructing, really trying to destruct everything. Yes. And then we are trying to construct, and we have to make that definite sharp distinction, right? I think that's
I have a really simple rule for my friends from all political persuasions, and I've got them on all sides, is if you're listening to the TV or the radio or your friends and they start going destructionist, turn them off. Whether they're liberals, progressives, Trumpists, whatever. Only listen to constructivist debate. What are you doing and what do you propose to make this place work? And that's what we're missing. I think we saw that. I heard the comment earlier with going to Loudoun County in the meetings. Let's have a meeting. Let's see what we can do. No, we're going to, the weaponizing and the protesters on the convoy. They're destructionists. What are they doing to contribute to solving that problem? That's what you need. So that's the narrative you need to flip. If you spend most of your time with a narrative that's dominating the airwaves on how is this getting better, or what are people trying to do to deal with inflation in a way that affects you personally and then meaningfully, then you have a good conversation. But if you're saying we're going to blame people, blame game, whatever, you're getting nowhere.
Yeah. No, I love it. That's a great way to wrap up. But before we do, I want to make sure we talk about your book, your 12th book we talked about. And yes. Tell us about that book. Do you have it right there? Can you show that? We'll put the, Robin, do you put that link to Randy's book in there? And we've been doing a lot of good books. So this one is another one for your reading list. Bob Fasick, all the readers.
I'll put it in on it.
There it is.
Thinking for Strategic Intelligence. I co-authored it with my wife. She wrote half, I wrote half. And when we went and wrote the subsequent editions, it was amazing. We couldn't remember who wrote which chapters. I mean, we had a very complimentary writing style, and it was an extremely good partnership. And then in the third edition of the book, and in fact, we just teaching a course to Norwegians using the book just this week. But it's turned out to be kind of universal in its applicability for what we like to do is to infuse that kind of thinking in a text like that, or parts of that book, or find a partner who could write another version of the book for high school. And to get it into the 12 to K to 12 curriculum. But we tried for a while trying to figure this, and it looked a little bit too daunting when you get into that environment.
Well, I love that. I think that's actually what we need: critical thinking, and get off the whole, the other critical race theory kind of all. We need to have kids be critical thinkers, and critical race theory is part of critical thinking. So it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And anyways, I digress. Randy, thank you so much. And you are a maverick of your time. It was a pleasure to get to know you. I hope you will keep joining, keep in touch with us, because it's really smart, and the way we need to be critical thinkers, it's really important in any kind of leadership role. So I thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I feel my obligation is to help people think through the issues, give them methodologies, give them approaches, give them techniques, and let them then decide where they come out politically or what makes the most sense. But we've taught a lot of people, and we want to just infuse more critical thinking skills in, no matter where you are on the political spectrum.
Yep. Well, thank you. I hope you'll stick around. We do have the after chat after 1. If not, we understand, but please do. I'm sure people will want to get more into detail if you have the time.
I will be there for the after chat. Yes.
Okay, Randy, thank you so much. And anyways, I hope you all feel a little more critically smart today. I want to make sure that we don't forget about us, and we see clearly that we need you to make us more powerful and make sure we're here weekly. And that is by supporting our work, subscribing to our social media, and in the chat, you'll see, go to our YouTube, subscribe, and watch all the wonderful stuff we have. We also have Stairs, wonderful badass briefings, and the Tuesday tidbits. And of course, like Randy, he's going to be at the after chat. We all know that's where it happens. We get to hear from you and see what's going on. And also, I want to thank you. A big shout out to Ann Richardson, Eileen Davis. They became patrons last week, and we have a subscription service. So just for the cost of a cup of coffee or lunch, you can be a 5, 10, or 25 a month subscriber. It really is fun to be part of the patrons. We hope you join the gang, as we say, and support our work. So thank you. And do we want to talk about our cold weather beanie Stare? Well, it's like highlight Stare. If you want to make sure that you have a beanie and you can look warm and cool like Stare, we still have a few left. And look how good she looks in that beanie. Can you see her? I'm going to add her to the spotlight. Okay, in her beanie. Thank you, Stare. You look good. So buy your beanie, as we say. Don't be a weenie. Buy your beanie. And then also, we love your suggestions. Send us your suggestions for the show. Email to me, Catherine, and we'll provide that email in the chat. But yeah, send me an email. Tell me what you'd like to see on the show, and that would be awesome. And lastly, also, we have got a few content concierges, and they've come through, and we're so happy to have a few, and we would like to have more help. If you want to be part of that team, you can help with the emails, website content, articles, and press releases. We love writers interested. Reach out to Robin. All right, that's a little promo piece, and just in time, we're going to go to Kazim Rashid, human rights lawyer, author, and a radio show host now on Sirius Radio. And you are also a candidate for Congress. Hello, Kazim, how are you?
I'm wonderful, Catherine. I'm wonderful, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's good to be here with you today.
Yeah, so I'm glad you can make it. So awesome to see you. And let's just get right to it, because I hope you enjoyed listening to Randy and look up his book, because I know this is right up your alley. You may want to have him on your show, because I'm telling you, it really turned my head when he just helped me with thinking about how this is so important to be critically thinking in all we do. So I would love just to talk to you also about, it's Black History Month, what's going on, and you have a PAC, Common Purpose. But let's talk about what you're seeing going on now. We're talking about reading the room. There's a lot to be concerned of when we see this rise of white supremacy, fascist behavior. And so give us your take on that. Go ahead.
Let me first start by saying that I am a Patreon subscriber to this program as well, and I encourage everyone to throw a cup of coffee a month at it. It goes a long way. And when we talk about taking action, a big part of taking action is making a financial contribution as well, because that's how the world works. And if you look at how the GOP has been so effective in being able to rule as a minority, it's because they've made investments on the local level. And that's what these wonderful leaders are doing here on the local level. So I encourage you to make an investment and encourage those in your circle. So let me get that plug out of the way. And I promise they didn't ask me to do that. I wanted to talk about that because it's important. And yeah, so let's talk about kind of where we are as a Commonwealth. And I'm going to get into the PAC a little bit as well. I think sometimes we forget that we're dealing with a populace of our country that may not have the same access to information that we all do. It seems that, everybody has internet, everybody can get access, but that's not necessarily the case. I read a recent article that said that 54% of Americans 16 and older, 54% have a reading comprehension of 6th grade or less. And so when you think about how we're crafting our message, how we're communicating to people, we need to understand that we have to meet people where they are. And if we don't meet them where they are, if we talk down, even if it's subconsciously, then people are gonna, their egos are gonna be impacted and they're gonna respond accordingly. And so my whole focus is, yes, let's be absolutely crystal clear on right and wrong. Let's not tolerate extremism or white supremacy or bigotry. And along with that, find a way to communicate and meet folks where they've been. Catherine mentioned I ran for Congress 2 years ago. While we didn't win, we ended up getting about 45,000 more votes than any Democrat in the history of the 1st District of Virginia. So for a brown Muslim immigrant and a first-time candidate to come in and have that kind of a spike, I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that we ran on this message of compassion through action, ran on this message of meeting people where they are and really having those conversations. And we had Trump supporters crash our events and we invited them in and had a dialogue about it. And a lot of those stories went viral for that reason. What we're dealing with right now is very serious. You've seen the governor's narc line, as I call it, to rat out teachers. And if you're, by the way, for those of you who are in Richmond, tomorrow at 1 p.m., we are having a rally near the governor's mansion at the Bell Tower between 1 and 2 p.m. You can go on my Facebook page. There's an event link. Definitely show up. The more, the merrier. But the whole focus is going to be to stand in solidarity against this ridiculous narc line. But I think it's even deeper than that. I think Randy talked about this, but it's even deeper than that. I mean, the sheer fact that our deputy AG is resigning or just resigned yesterday. Why? Because she was caught supporting fascism publicly. And mind you, this is a person who, while claiming the insurrection was a legitimate public discourse, also said that Trump won the election. And this was the person in charge of Virginia elections. So you put two and two together, you do the math on that, and it's not a very good output. And again, it goes back to why it's so critical that we stay engaged and involved, because unless we do, we're in for a world of hurt. Now, I firmly believe that until the election actually happens, I'm not going to buy into the traditional default that, in midterms, the party in the White House, they have a terrible midterm. We still control that narrative. We still can create that urgency and get out there. And so one of the ways I'm doing that is through a PAC I've launched called Common Purpose PAC. And as the name would indicate, the goal is to work on our commonalities and then work with a purpose, this kind of ongoing purpose of protecting our democracy, uplifting marginalized communities. And one of the ways we're doing that is to invest not just financial resources, but we take a three-pronged approach. One is investing financial resources. As I said at the outset, you certainly need to make sure there's money where people need that support to win elections. But beyond that, we're also investing our institutional knowledge, having run for Congress, run for office multiple times, and helping folks get boots on the ground through volunteers, through texters, through door knockers. So it's this kind of this trifecta strategy to support candidates. And then the question of who we're also trying to support is extremely significant. We're not going to support people who are corporate Democrats. People who take corporate money, I don't care if you're a Democrat, if you take corporate money, in my book, you're not helping the cause and you're making things actually worse. We are focused on progressives, people who are grassroots donors, people who are activists, and people who are from historically underrepresented communities. 98% of elected Republicans are white. You guys probably saw the tweet a few days ago where the GOP official account bragged that they have 40 Black Republicans running out of a potential 580,000 open seats in America on the state, local, and federal level. They bragged at 40 Black Republicans. That's 0.005%. It's absurd. But on the Democrat side, we're actually not that much better. 85% of elected Democrats are white as well, overwhelmingly male. And so when you think about where we are as a country, and you think about the outrage over the idea of one Black woman becoming a Supreme Court justice after 108 white men, you begin to understand that we actually have a system of policy that isn't reflective of the beautiful diversity that is the United States. And so the goal really is to elect more people who look like America, not for the sake of affirmative action or checking a box, but for the sake of reality. And so the folks that we're supporting with Common Purpose are people from historically underrepresented and marginalized communities, BIPOC communities, women communities, people from lower income communities who simply haven't had access because while they've done the work, they've been in the trenches, they have the right ideas, they don't have the millionaire uncle to write them a big check. They don't have the billionaire corporations supporting them. And so that's where our support comes in. And also I'll include the link here.
I want to say a few things. Yeah, look, I think why it's so important when I was listening about the Supreme Court and when Justice Thorogood came on, right? It just changes the discussion. So we're electing more people of color, electing different people, getting people to the table. It's a lot harder to have this discussion that's happening now when you can see this rage of reaction and white backlash, right? Yep. But if you, like you said, in the Common Purpose, have the purpose to get more people at the table, I do believe in Virginia, we would have been able to shut down this discussion a lot quicker, especially if you had, if you had some of these women that were on the bench waiting, boy, they would have shut that shit down right away. I'm just going to say there would, but it's because, there's a lot of reasons why, but having more people of color, and like you said, the beautiful diversity we are in that celebration actually changes the room. It changes the discussion. It changes the temperature, and it really leads in so many people's experiences. So I'll let you say the last word and then let you get back to court maybe.
No, thank you. I appreciate the time and the platform. And I think you've really said it eloquently, Catherine. It really does come down to investing in the type of future that we want. I'll share this quick comment. I put up a video on TikTok this morning about women's rights. As a lawyer, I support women who are survivors of domestic and sexual violence. And I think one thing folks forget is our national, violence-driven policy towards women. And yes, the word violence, I use that deliberately, right? It wasn't until 1848 that women could own property. It wasn't until 1920 that domestic violence against women was considered a criminal act. And people talk about women got the right to vote in 1921. Well, white women did. Asian women didn't get it until 1952. Native women until 1962. Black women until 1965. Hispanic women didn't get the chance to vote until 1975. And then we all know about how women couldn't sign for so much as a credit card until 1974. And on reproductive health, there still are major attacks. And so for me, this is really a moral imperative. It's a human rights imperative. And I'm grateful to have an amazing network of supporters already invested. We're already past the $50,000 mark on fundraising, which I'm excited about. We've already identified 10 candidates, 9 of them women, that we're going to be investing in and supporting, majority people of color as well. And so to the extent you're able to support, it would go a long way. And people were asking about social media. I'm at Qasim Rashid across all social media platforms, so don't hesitate to reach out. And if you can make it tomorrow to our protest in front of the governor's mansion, please do. But thank you for all the work you do.
I may have to get in the car. Thank you, Qasim. Let's get down to Richmond, and you could hear the Qasim Rashid show Sundays at 10 a.m. Good luck with everything. And I've donated and I keep supporting, and stay well, my friend. Great to see you. And over to Delicia Ward, because what a great segue to Deborah Woolen and this conversation about Black women running in politics and this magazine. So take it over, my friend.
I mean, listen, he just laid the foundation of this conversation, because while we're talking about the backlash of a Black woman to the Supreme Court, let's keep it real. Right? When we say that black political experts say that the Joe Biden administration must defend the historic pick of a Black woman to the Supreme Court in an unprecedented way. So I am honored to be sharing the same space with our guest, Deborah Woolen, founder and editor-in-chief of What She Said magazine, a magazine specifically created for Black women in politics. So Deborah, welcome to the show.
Hi, Julicia. Again, it's so good to chat with you again.
It's good to chat with you again. We're going to throw this in the very beginning. Me and Deborah did get to film with Inside Scoop yesterday. We did go into detail about what we are going to talk about today. So make sure you follow up with Inside Scoop to get further, because we don't have that much time. So let's just get straight to business. Talk to us about what inspired you to create What She Said magazine. Share with us a story of a Black powerhouse woman in politics, and how can people subscribe to the magazine?
Absolutely. So I guess one of the primary reasons that I created What She Said magazine is to make, just to draw a picture, to make politics sexy, especially to the Black community. Now, does that mean that when you read the magazine or politics, does it create that exact emotion inside of you of a desire? Maybe not for everyone, but the goal of What She Said magazine is to make politics a part of your life, to understand that politics and decision making in that space should be a part of our lifestyle, especially as African Americans. So the content within What She Said magazine is digestible. It is, it helps you make decisions. It helps you understand how it applies to you. And one of the things that I'm really proud of is that it creates talking points. One of the biggest issues I heard when I began to really introduce policymakers, especially policymakers of color, to my friends and family, one of the biggest concerns that I had was there's just so much information. I want to be involved in these conversations, but I don't know what to say. I don't know where to start. And so What She Said magazine, again, makes that information digestible, makes it easy to understand, and gives really good talking points, and helps readers make good decisions when it comes to policymaking and where to place your vote.
Right. Listen, I love What She Said magazine. I know it's digital right now, but I know near future I'm gonna be able to have it right on that coffee table and be able to flip through it and have my daughter flip through it. And because like you said, it's important to make politics about our lifestyle. We want to make sure that we're talking about politics as much as we're talking about sports, as much as we're talking about what we're going to cook for dinner at 5 o'clock, right? We want to make sure that our communities, especially our Black communities and our minority communities, are normalizing political conversations in their everyday life. And this is what your magazine is introducing and bringing. And you're creating this space for Black women in politics, which is absolutely phenomenal. You recently, I read through the magazine, you featured a mayor. I think her name was Mayor Michelle. If you want to share with us real quick, just a little bit about her story, her parents, and and what you got to share, the platform that you're actually providing someone like her.
Absolutely. So I shared Mayor Michelle Davis. She's the first African American, first woman, and first Democrat to be the mayor of the city of Manassas. And her story is particularly riveting. Number one, because she has all of those firsts. But when she was elected mayor, her mother she shared how her mother was very emotional. And she shared that just a street over from where she was being inaugurated, she cleaned the homes on Grant Avenue. And she was told that, you will never be nothing, your children will never be anything. But here she was, now the mayor, like her daughter essentially, is the mayor of the very city that told her, you can only eat here. You can only do this. This will only be your job. You, because of the color of your skin, will only have this station in life. And then she also shared that outside of her office window, she looks at the door to the registrar's office that was for colored only. And now within her lifetime, she's just broken so many barriers. And she has a program called My Mayor Looks Like Me. So just because, she's the first African American, just because she's the first woman, she won't be the last. And she's making sure that she opens that door to other people.
Absolutely, which is a powerhouse. My mayor looks like me, which means representation matters, right? Which is what Kasim was just talking about as far as saying, you know, the 98% and the 85% of what Republicans and Democrats look like. But Mayor Michelle is saying, my mayor looks like me. That's giving it a chance for our daughters and for, you know, our population to just have that opportunity to say that, hey, this person looks like me. This is something that I can do, right? You know, Black women are opening those doors. And that's why it is important to have Black women in our democracy, you know? So we really, truly appreciate the work that What She Said magazine is doing. And thank you for sharing a feature of what our audience will see when you actually subscribe to this magazine. So talk to us about subscription. How do you subscribe? How is this going to come into my inbox every month? And then how can Black women in politics be featured in this?
That's such a great question. I'm glad you asked. So right now it's a digital publication, completely free. So you can go to www.whatshesaidmag.com. I'll make sure I put that in the chat. A pop-up window will come up. Just put your email address in, and we'll make sure that you get the new issues that come out. You can also follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram specifically at _What She Said Mag. Don't forget the underscore. And for Black women, and if you are a community organizer, if you are running for elected office, if you are interested in politics in any capacity, please reach out to me. You can contact me or contact our team specifically at editor@whatshesaidmag.com. We want to feature you. We want to highlight you. We want to tell the world about what you're doing. And as you mentioned, Jalicia, Black women, and actually Randy mentioned it, and he mentioned, and I'm sorry, also Kasim mentioned just the impact that Black women are having in our democracy, and it's so important. I just want to highlight something that Supervisor Juli said. She said that for white supremacists, they mentioned that she said something along the lines of perhaps it's difficult to read the room. And that's the narrative that people would want us to think, right? That it's difficult to read the room, and it isn't. When you read something, you are intentional about learning, and that's what it takes to create change. To read the room, you have to be intentional about learning, and as Randy mentioned, being analytical, wanting to make change. So that's what She Said magazine will help you do. It will help you to read the room if you come with an intention to learn and how to make change.
Boom. And then you got a quote on the back of that magazine. Let's go. Look, we got about 30 seconds. Let everyone know what that quote is about on the back of the magazine.
Absolutely. So at the end of every magazine, the quote is, in spite of racism, sexism, and classism, it is altruism that has catapulted the Black women to the forefront of American politics.
And listen, so if you guys haven't subscribed yet, they dropped it in the chat. Make sure you subscribe. You want this, you want true representation, you want diversity. And Deborah Woolen is bringing that to us. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for dedicating your time and your energy into this, because you are part of that revolutionary change that we are yearning to see in our democracy. So we truly appreciate you coming to the show, and we look forward to you coming back. I know you got some issues coming up. You're going to be talking about, share real quick. Look, we could be here forever. I'm so sorry. Share real quick the issues you have coming up this year, because this is what people need to expect coming.
Yes, the next issue is going to focus on the Global South. We're going to have issues on midterm elections, the media, the courts. And we're also going to have an issue that will focus on Black women in all parties. So Democrats, Republicans, the Independent Party, the Green Party, just understanding why it's important to have representation in every space.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you so much, Deborah. We look forward. We hope you come back when your features launch, and that way we can keep everybody updated with the first Black magazine in our country for Black women in politics. You got the title, girl.
I'm going to subscribe. As a white woman, I'm reading this book. I love, first of all, the look of this book is awesome and beautiful. I love the beauty of it. Thank you. And what she said, what you just said, really resonated. And that quote, thank you so much, Deborah, for being here. And Jalicia, for always bringing it. It's that
Absolutely.
time again where we have to wrap up and say thank you to everybody in the room. I want to thank all our guests, Kazim Rashid, Deborah Woolen, Randy Pherson, being here today, Juli Briskman, because we had a great conversation about reading the room. And remember, become a patron of the show. Follow us on Twitter and our YouTube, all that great social media stuff. All right, everybody, have a great week. Have a great time, and let's roll with